Welcome, gentlemen. Week 13. Week 13 is such a key week because it talks about things that we've long since forgotten about. It talks about things like, remember when you were a kid and your parents were wrapping Christmas gifts? And although you were excited about wrapping gifts if you saw them doing it, what you were really excited about were these. Because these in the hands of a little boy become awesome weapons, right? In the little hands of a little boy, this is something you could swing at and not get in serious trouble. In fact, you could almost hit a lamp and not knock it over. Remember that moment? I think there's something so fascinating about little boys when they get something like this in their hands and suddenly that little thing turns from that which was holding wrapping paper to a sword. When it becomes a sword, little boys just somehow come alive. Right? When we fight with these things, and we had battles. I mean, when I was a kid, we would have battles like this for hours. Well, no, for about 13 minutes while these things would last until they get hit enough and then they break. The coolest part about it is when you hit the other guy's hand, it won't hurt him. Right? It might make him go ow for a second, but man, you could go at this for the longest time. And all you really needed was just a little roll from a wrapping paper and a toilet paper roll. That's all you needed, and you had it. And if this broke, you found a stick. Now when you hit the other guy, it would hurt his hand, but at least at that particular point, you would know, okay, man, we were just doing what we were designed to do. Now you give a stick to a girl, and it becomes a wand. And she walks around and she heals everyone and fixes everything. And you give this to a little boy, though, it's always a sword. It's always a weapon. Now I want to know what happened from this to where we are today. What happened? I think sometimes what happens is we get kind of caught up in doing life because we grow up. I remember a moment in my life, I was, I think 12, maybe 13. Joel and I would hang together. That was my best friend, Joel. He would live next door to me. And on this day, I have no idea where everybody was. Rick was gone. John was gone. We couldn't find anybody. So we couldn't play baseball down in the circle where we would always play baseball. The circle was this part of our neighborhood where we had about, I think it was like 3 houses that were within breaking window distance. But we would set up bases in this circle. So if you slid into second base, you'd be removing, body parts because you were sliding on the macadam. But it was the greatest place to play baseball. They wanted us to play wiffle ball, but when nobody was looking, we'd play real ball, at least certainly with a hard rubber ball. On this day, however, everybody was gone. Joel and I would normally, with our friends, if we weren't playing baseball, we're out in the woods playing Army. We had foxholes dug, and it was the coolest world to live in. But everybody was gone. It was just Joel and I. So Joel and I decided, let's jump on our bikes. Let's go for a ride. And we rode to White Marsh Cemetery. And White Marsh Cemetery was this coolest place because you could play tag in there because there were these roads going through the cemetery everywhere. They had a big tower in the middle with a bell tower. It was a cool place. It was a couple miles away from our house, maybe 4 or 5 miles. We were enjoying our freedom. You see, these weapons that we had as kids that we would play with, this weapon of freedom was ours. And it can't hurt anybody. It's just freedom. We're 13, doing life in the summer. On this particular day, though, we were stinking bored. I mean, we had ridden around White Marsh Cemetery. We had ridden on our bikes. Nobody was around. And so we ended up on a turnpike bridge over the Pennsylvania Turnpike near the Willow Grove interchange. Now, if you happen to be driving about 40-some years ago underneath that interchange, I want to apologize because we were dropping little pebbles. Now, they were actually little pebbles, almost like the kind of pebbles that would be like cinders that you would put on a road when you're trying to feather it, or at the off-season when winter was happening and you'd have to kind of cover it with cinders. They were pretty little things. Joel would stand on one side of the bridge. He would drop his hand, and I would drop it on the other side of the bridge, and at that particular point, I would hit the back of a truck. It wasn't going to do any damage. It was just the back of a truck somewhere, and in the back of that truck, it would cause us to see that, we were just hitting things. We were having a blast. In fact, it was going so well. Here we are with our swords of freedom, and everything's going so cool until the police officers showed up. Apparently, dropping things off a turnpike bridge while cars are going underneath it at 65 and 70 miles an hour is not a safe function. And we were just having fun. We were just being free, right? Kids, swinging away. Until the police officers called us over. I'll never forget, the cop was standing right there looking at me. He goes, "You, I looked around like, who? Me? Like the other 52 people who aren't on the bridge? And he says, come over here. So I came over here. They put our bikes in the back of their cars. 2 cops, 13-year-old kids. They didn't use handcuffs, which I was grateful for. We ended up at the police station. They shared with us the incredible law-breaking activity we had been involved in. We were pretty convinced that our sort of freedom was going to end us up in jail for the rest of our lives. We were actually relieved when they offered to call our parents. And you know you're dead when they're going to call your parents, when they're going to call your parents from a police station. But hey, you know what? It was so exciting to know that our parents would intervene. So we would only be grounded for 2.5 years instead of jail for most of our lifetime. I remember when the police officer, just before our parents arrived, it was now, they had turned us over to the heavy guys, you know, the big hitters. And the sergeant said to us, gentlemen, it's time for you to grow up. You can't just play at the level of freedom you have without understanding that it could cost a life. And all of a sudden, this sword was suddenly being replaced with this sword. Here we were as kids, just having a good time, having some freedom, and he was saying to you, you got this sword whether you know it or not. Now guys, we were at puberty at this point. At puberty, we now have another sword, the sword of sexuality, which was a game up until now, but now all of a sudden with that same sword, we can cause a child to come onto the earth. We are capable at that age, or close to it, of being a father. And all of a sudden, what is a toy becomes a sword. Now, I will tell you, this sword here I'm going to use is really one of our staging swords that we use around my office. This one really is more ornamental. If I swung this at you, it's going to hurt. But the sword back on the night, or some of the other swords around here, if I swung those at you, I will cut your hand off, not just hurt your hand. I think that's an interesting symbol. I think it's an interesting symbol to realize that we went from being that which was irresponsible and childish, the swords you would swing with and play with as a kid, to realizing now all of a sudden we had this area of responsibility. Now I tell you that because what we call trail number 13 is this amazing thing about being young again. Now, when we say being young again, and I've just talked to you about the sort of responsibility, you look at that term and you go, well, what do you mean? Well, here's what I mean. When we started to put this away as a man, and we started to learn that this was something we'd be responsible with and would have consequences. We'd start driving cars. When you drive a car, you don't drive like this, even though sometimes as teenagers we do, because we don't realize the difference between the weight of these two items. But the reality is there's a responsibility level that when you were just playing in an arcade, it was a toy, but now all of a sudden it can kill people, right? It's that change. So when we say being young again, what does that mean? It means this, that this sword has really been put away. And it's been replaced by this one, but we need to have an attitude as a man that while we're responsible, we better stop not enjoying life anymore. See, I think sometimes we just stop enjoying life. We're going to stop it. So everything we're going to talk about on Trail 13 is understanding the difference between the two swords. The sword that plays and the sword that has consequences, and finding the balance between the two of them so that suddenly what we can do, what we can learn to do as men, is get to the place where we can enjoy life again. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to work on it. In fact, to tell you how tough this is going to be, the movie I'm going to talk to you about is How the Grinch Stole Christmas. I mean, you can't get any more ridiculous with no significant meaning behind it, just to sit back and enjoy it. If you ever watch it, that's all you can do with it. So let's talk about this. In order to do that, take your workbooks and look at the first statement on being young again. It says this: the richness of a well-lived forest life is easily within a man's grasp, and will keep him from feeling bored and boring others. Everything about it that I was struggling with that day, the issue of boredom. The issue of boredom is, I think, what gets men in trouble. We know we have this sword. We know that we just can't wield it unwieldy. We got to be proper in what we do with it, because if we're not careful, we're going to do damage, right? We just can't run around like crazy guys. But as a result of that, we're bored. We have all this responsibility. Responsibility gets overwhelming sometimes. In your nightly news, there's a man by the name of David, which we've talked about. We talked about him in light of the affair, in light of killing Uriah, in light of Nathan confronting him. We've talked about him. I want to talk to you about him before the affair. What's happening is the nation of Israel that he oversees has been without the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is the symbol for the nation of God being with us. Now, to be honest with you, God can't be contained in a box. But for God's purposes, this Ark of the Covenant, containing certain items that would remind the nation of Israel of him, was sort of where it would be in the Holy of Holies in the temple. This Ark of the Covenant, under King Saul, had been captured and taken away, and has now been back since David's become king. Through a series of military moves, the Ark of the Covenant is returning to town. On this day, David's deciding which sword to use, and he actually uses this one. He celebrates. In fact, he celebrates it with such clarity that he's dancing almost uncontrollably. Not necessarily what you would consider to be the normal action of a king. He is dancing in front of the ark as it's coming into town in this great celebration. He's going to give out things to his people. He's going to give out raisin cakes and breads, and everything is just about the celebration because God's presence has returned to the nation of Israel. And he celebrates like a little kid. It's kind of cool, actually. Michal, his wife, she's the daughter of the former king. She's been watching this, and she despises him. In fact, here's what it says in the Bible, that she looks at him. When she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she was filled with contempt for him. So when the celebration's over, he comes walking back in with this sword in hand, and she says, "Where's your sword? Why aren't you acting like a man?" And David says this. Let me put this quote for you on the screens. "He appointed me as the leader of Israel, the people of the Lord. So I celebrate before the Lord. I celebrate before the Lord." Michal, you're wrong. I have this sword. I know I'm the king. But I will enjoy who I am. I will enjoy what I've been made to be. I will enjoy before the people the things that are important to them. I will cause them to understand that with God, all the responsibility and the weight of being a king is suddenly shared with him. And I will be young again. There's something so noble about that. So how do we get here? How do we get to that place? Let's walk through a couple things I think will help us to become young again. Roman number 1. A warrior can make great strides towards a richly filled life by the following. You can make great strides towards a richly filled life by 1. Entering into the moment, limiting distractions, and becoming fully engaged with the events going on around him. Here's what I mean by that. You can be fully engaged, and you have to be young and playful. Let me give you 2 examples. You're sitting there, you're watching TV, and your wife walks in front of the TV set. When you're acting young again, you don't say, "Yo, baby, get out of my way." And you don't ever say, "I can't see the TV," because that's saying you're way too wide, right? You know what you go? You go, "Whoa. Best thing I've seen on TV all day is you in front of it." That's being young again. It's being playful. It's not saying, "Hey, the game's on," right? It's this moment where you go, "Hey, baby, I see what I really am longing to see in front of the TV set, not on the TV set." Or on the TV is something that you're not necessarily excited about, but your kids are. Especially your little kids, have you that phase of their life where no matter what, you don't want to watch it? Instead of you saying, "I'm the dad, I got the remote," why don't you get down on the floor? Sit and watch TV with them again. See, I think there's a perspective that we lose. I think that we so feel the weight of the one sword that we miss the joy of the other. Look at number 2. Number 2 says this. allowing himself to completely let go through laughter, learning, loving, and living. You know what's interesting? You and I need to just kind of have fun. On Caleb's 20th birthday, we did a series of things. He's 20 now. This is just before he found out that his cancer had come back. And what we did is we did a series of fun things, and then at the end of that, we all went to see the latest Narnia. I think it was the Voyage of the Dawn Treader Narnia movie. It's a Disney movie. We went, we laughed, we engaged, because we had grown up reading those stories to our kids. Caleb, when he was 2 years of age, was listening to the Voyage of the Dawn Treader as we would read him a story as he went to sleep. So we went and we celebrated. Birthdays are celebrations, right? Have you made that really important to your family? Do they know that you celebrate with them? Now, I have to be honest with you. This is where I have a little bit of a problem. I struggle a little bit in this area because I sometimes feel so much the weight of the sword that I celebrate them well. I don't celebrate my birthdays well. The guys ask me, what can I get for me? I don't need anything. I don't want anything. And to be honest with you, I don't want anything, don't need anything. But the reality is I'm denying them watching me be young again. I think, guys, we have to start thinking about what this is all about for us as men. It's bringing, when we walk in, we're bringing laughter and joy, and it's good that Dad's home. We can breathe. Not that the party has arrived. You don't have to be the party. What you have to be is not the party killer. What you have to be is the one who enters in. Don't always make the conflicts with your family about the crisis of the moment. Sometimes just celebrate what's going on in life. Listen to each other. Learn. Look at number 3. I think it'll help. Replacing the tension and hyper-alertness that are part of staying on his game with a relaxed sense of self-worth and confidence in his ability to adapt. That's a long sentence that basically says this. Gentlemen, relax. You'll be able to catch up. Just relax. I think we have trouble doing that as guys. If you want to be young again, little kids just break into spontaneous relaxation and spontaneous activity. And what they stop doing, they find in about an hour later and get all excited about it because they forgot about it. Wouldn't it be awesome if you would forget about the office for a few minutes? Forget about the job, forget about the pressures of life for a few moments, and don't then create more pressure. You just have this opportunity to just say, I'm going to stop for a few minutes and just enjoy the moment. The reason we do movies, and we do movies a lot in our family, obviously you can tell because I'm always talking about them. We do movies because, and I think it's so important, it allows an opportunity to forget for a few minutes everything else. It'll still be there on the other end of the movie. It just allows you to engage in a story that has a beginning and an ending and a hero. And the hero wins. And it becomes that which is pretty exciting for us. Look at number 4. Utilizing the good times within the forest to build an emotional fuel reserve that will assist him when facing difficult times in the future. What is it that does it for you? What is it that fills your tank? What is it that you do with or without people that cause you to say, I come home dragging the sword. I can barely pick it up, to how am I going to get refreshed and enjoy life again? There's a lot of different things that do that for me. One of them is my shop. I'm not a very good woodworker, but I have a shop that I love. It's down in my basement. I love to be involved in there. I just built a rocking horse for our grandson, Cole. Now, there's something about the shop that just allows me to go down and get retooled. It allows me to have a few minutes where I just get refreshed. What do you have? It's what's going to help you be young again. I know that you have the responsible sword, and I know that you have to be careful. But guys, enjoyment is what allows you the freedom to make a difference in those around you. Look at the next one. Number 5, finding ways to solidify memories of the good times he's experienced in the forest. Finding ways that will solidify some memories for us in the forest. They're pictures. They're videos. For us, we create things that our guys remember throughout their whole life that says, hey, remember back to this? One of the reasons I ask you to either watch a movie or think about a movie is because when you think of that movie, again, I want you to remember this experience. So every time you see The Grinch That Stole Christmas, because you only see it one more time in your life probably, every time you see it, you'll be reminded of, you know what, I got to be young again. I have to know the joy of that. Matter of fact, the best grandfathers in the world are those who are young again. who just don't worry about things and just kind of enjoy that grandchild unspoiled in life, but spoiling them in the experience. Number 6, including others with whom he has relationships in his memory-creating moments. Guys, one of the things I want you to do is include others. Include them. Include them in what you do. See, I want you to make memories. But almost every memory I've ever had when I've traveled alone, my family doesn't enter into those. My friends don't enter into those. I show them pictures, and it's like they're going to go, yay! But they're not there, right? It's things that we share together. So include them in memories. Take trips together. Our family loves Disney World. We do Disney World all the time, maybe every other year, maybe sometimes even more often than that. Some families hate it. We absolutely love it. It's one of the most cool experiences for us, and because it's always us. A couple years ago, I was speaking, actually longer than that, probably about a decade ago, I was speaking down in Florida, and the group I was with decided to go to Disney World, so I went with them. It was nothing like I remember. Because every time I go with my family. The units around me that God has blessed me with, and we just celebrate and have fun together. I really believe that this area of your life is so key in the development of everything that's important around you, including finding out why you're alive, getting to where you need to go. Look at the next one. Granting permission to himself and his friends, number 7, to create positive rituals of celebration. Granting permission to yourself and your friends to create positive celebration moments. Every year at Christmas, my sons get a letter, and every year when they get that letter, which Lynn gets a copy of, but it's written to the sons, they will find out about themselves and their calling and their voice and all the things that are part of who they are and their giftedness. They're going to find out about that, but they're also going to find out about their brothers and what's happened over the last year. It's interesting. I wrote the letter for the guys this year, and it called it a year of healing because some things had taken place in healing some of the wounds from Joel's marriage and from Caleb's cancer, and Seth had kind of hit the height of his career's abilities in high school. It was just so exciting to watch everybody come together. Josh had a new job, and everything was coming together, and then we found out just before I gave the guys the letters that Caleb's cancer had come back. But in the process of us talking about the healing, it was a celebration of what God had done in our lives over the last few years. We had some pretty tough years. But they would get together, and they all have those letters to remember. As a matter of fact, those letters still remind them of the few minutes before we found out on December 22nd that Caleb's cancer had returned. I think it's that journey. I think it's that moment, those things that will cause you to go, okay, I can get through this, right? I can celebrate life. Look at the next one, number 8. Recognizing that a drugged or drunken state diminishes the positive effects of a pleasurable time. Remember that a drunken state diminishes pleasure. Now, guys, this is where we have to be so careful. See, I think a lot of guys drink and do drugs because they think they still have this sword. But if you know anything about drunk driving, if you know anything about the impact of alcohol, the impact of drugs, not just in the community, which is huge, but in a man's life, you realize how much this messes it up. A lot of times when I say to you, learn to celebrate, learn to be young again, you think party. And that's not celebrating. That's not being young again. It's actually a destructive part of the direction of our lives. It's making sure that with wisdom we do these things and it won't just run ahead with these. So I give you that warning in the journey here. Be careful how you define celebrating. It's okay in certain settings, in certain ways, but be careful of the extent to which you go. Drunkenness, drug abuse, those kind of things. Look at the next one. Number 9, accepting and celebrating. And I think this is so cool. Accepting and celebrating another night according to their definition of a good time. One of the things that I want you to learn to do is to celebrate the guys in your campfire. I want you to go, wow, that is an amazing accomplishment. Celebrate their raise. Celebrate one of the changes in their family when they get married. Celebrate the birth. Celebrate the pregnancy. Celebrate the stages of their life. Celebrate the first step, the first tooth. Celebrate with them what they're celebrating. When you learn to do that, it's a bonding between knights. When knights act young again, sword fighting by yourself is not fun. You need to sword fight with somebody else, right, when you're a little kid. Guys, celebrating who you are as a man. It means you're going to have fun with other guys. You're going to enjoy it in ways that are helpful and healthy for them. You don't always ever enable them. Almost every movie you're going to see about college behavior, almost every movie you're going to see about the night before a guy gets married is nothing but destructive stuff. That's not telling you how to celebrate with other guys. That's all that Spanx males know. It's all the world tends to sell, but you know differently as a knight. Look at number 10. Being willing to play, especially with his own children. Being willing to play with his own children. Guys, play games. Turn off the TV. Now, don't force your kids to turn off the TV and play games because all they do is they feel they go crazy with you, but suggest it. Get down on the floor. Play games that take a long time. Monopoly and Risk. Play games that are short. Play games that you wouldn't normally play. Apples to apples. Do things with your family. Build a puzzle. Go for a walk. Do things that allow you to engage with kids. If you don't have children, you're not married, be involved with your nephews and nieces. Be involved with those around you that just, man, I'll tell you guys, the coolest thing about being a grandfather is every time I walk in, I'm a hero, right? The coolest thing about being an uncle is walking in with your niece and nephews is, man, that's my favorite uncle, he really cares. One of the things you can do is watch movies. Let me recommend that you consider the movie How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And now, you probably read the Dr. Seuss book when you were a kid, heard it, you saw the animated version. So Ron Howard decided to make a living version of it, and it was kind of bizarre, it's kind of out there, but it was a lot of fun. It's actually a movie, when it has Jim Carrey in it, you know that it's not going to be serious, it's going to have impacts. I want you to consider this particular scene. At this point in the movie, Jim Carrey is trying to just get these people that seem to be so happy down in the valley that drive him crazy, all dressed with their weird hats and funny-looking faces and all that they are down there. He wants to hurt them, like he feels he's been hurt by them. So he decides that he's going to steal Christmas. And it's in this that the poems are given that are part of Zeus's magic when he writes. The song that you always remember, "You're foul one, Mr. Grinch." All of that's happening during this scene. The whole time as he's preparing and trying to make this moment where he's going to sweep down in. Guys, nobody steals Christmas. Nobody can do what he does, right? But as you're watching it, don't you find yourself getting engaged and just saying, it's just kind of fun? Now, when that scene ends, when that scene comes to the end and he's on his way now to attack the city and steal Christmas, I just want you to know that you smiled, you laughed, you enjoyed the scene. You did. You just sat there and you just laughed with Jim Carrey being the Grinch. You laughed with this mythical creature that wasn't going to swoop into your house and steal Christmas. I think sometimes when we stop and enjoy a movie like that, I just sit back for a few minutes. Just do life and breathe a little bit. Do you know that you breathe a little bit more when you laugh? Just it frees you up. The reason I'm talking about this is because I think in order for us to map out our lives and get to where we're designed to get to and become all that we're designed to be, we're going to have to enjoy life along the way, or we will keep giving up. I think God calls us to do like David, celebrate. Like Dr. Seuss, do that which is just fun for a child to remember and to learn and to grow. Look at this, a couple other things that we want to talk about that I think will help. Roman numeral number 11, I'm sorry, number 11 in the process. Letting go of his to-do list temporarily in order to fully enter into and experience the pleasure of the moment. Even though it sort of looks like Roman numeral 2, the number 11 is actually really an important one to us. This particular one helps us see things very differently. The statement of letting go, letting the do list go away. Every once in a while with Lynn, she and I will go away for 24 to 48 hours to our favorite bed and breakfast. That's really pretty much self-contained. Jacuzzi, fireplace, everything. It just is everything we want it to be, and we just hide away. We don't talk about things that must be done at home. We do talk about our goals for the future. We do dream together. What we do actually during this time is we let go of the kids. We still have our cell phones. If they need us, they call us. But for the most part, they're all covered. That we lock ourselves away and just enjoy each other, enjoy life. But we also find ourselves at that particular point beginning to breathe again and to think beyond survival into where do we go from here. We actually try to do that particular action about 4 times a year. We also go away together for up to a week, once a year together. As our kids are growing, we still do a lot of traveling with them. And so when we do it, though, it allows us to let go. You have to do this. You can do those in many things. You don't have to do it in 24 hours. You can do it in 12. You can do it in 6. But for a period of time, you have to let go of the lists that drive you. Look at 12. Giving himself permission to experiment with novel experiences that will enable him to discover new areas of pleasure in his life. You're going to have, I like this idea, giving himself permission to experiment. I want you to have permission to experiment, guys. Now, in moral, healthy ways. I love to drive fast. I absolutely love to do it. However, it's illegal. There's damage that can take place. A couple of years ago, though, a bunch of guys that do nights with me sort of kidnapped me on a weekend. They said, "Hey, don't plan anything on this weekend. We want to take you to an experience that'll be fun." And they actually covered the expense of the weekend for me. I was really honored. About 8 guys. 8 of us went. We jumped on an airplane, had no idea where we were going, and these guys are not safe guys. I really should have never done this. I have no idea where I ended up. We flew down. To make a long story short, we ended up at Talladega, and we raced NASCAR cars. Guys, I loved it. Just to get in the car, this body getting in the car was a tricky thing. Get strapped in there. There's a guy in the car with you. And as soon as I had a guy in the car with me, he doesn't have a steering wheel, he doesn't have a brake pedal, a gas pedal. He has a fire extinguisher, which I guess is important. And he's sitting next to me. As soon as I knew I had a guy next to me, guess what? I'm saying, dude, he doesn't want to die, so I'm going for it. And man, 181 miles an hour. I passed, I think, 8 guys on the 10 laps I did on the 2.5-mile track at Talladega. I had a blast. And as soon as I got out of the car, number 1, I wanted to do it again. It cost a lot, so I wasn't going to. But 2, and this is really important, I wanted to bring Lynn and the 4 boys with me and do it all so that we all die together. In all the years of them doing that, they've never had an accident. So if I brought my sons down, we would change all of that. But it was such a great experience for me. It was experiencing life bigger than I had known it before. And a bunch of guys gave it to me as a gift. Those kind of things you need. Experiment with things that you haven't done before. It kind of makes life enjoyable. Look at number 13. Living a life of balance through establishment of a realistic ratio of work to play. A balance between the two. If you were to take your swords, you're going to have to find the balance. You guys, you're an adult. This will never, ever, ever go away. But you're a boy at heart. So you have to find the balance between the two. Every week I talk to you about a warrior. Sergeant Alvin York is an amazing guy. He's a guy that, when he was a kid, was raised in Tennessee in the hill country, and he was really poor. 75-acre farm, but I mean, his mom had to take in laundry. They were barely surviving on this farm. They were so poor that he loved to hunt, but he had to make his own bow and arrow to hunt. He would shoot snakes and lizards and those kind of things as a little child. When he got old enough to carry a rifle, his father wouldn't let him have bullets because they couldn't afford bullets. They were too sparing, so when they would go hunting, they had to be very careful with it. So he would grow up learning to shoot a weapon with no bullet in it, but aimed, and he got so good, believe it or not, without a bullet, of aiming that weapon, that when he did have a bullet in it to go hunting as he got older, he would hit and kill his prey every time. His dad will be kicked in the head by a mule and die. And Alvin York will start living a pretty wild life. Drunkenness and gambling, carousing, just actually very destructive pattern of life. Until he meets Christ, his shadow gets handled. Christ frees him back up into the spirit and becomes a changed man. So when World War I broke out and he was asked to join, actually, when the draft was taking place, he asked if he could be a conscientious objector because of what he had been and who he was. He really didn't want to take a life. 4 times he applied to be a CO, and 4 times he was turned down. So when he became a soldier, he thought, well, God must have a reason for me to be a soldier. I'll be the best I can be. The reason became clear one day in a certain battle where half of the troops around him were down. All the commanders were down. He was on his way to becoming a sergeant at that particular point. He knew he had to stand up and rescue his guys. And he literally stood up in the middle of battle with bullets fighting around him. He will kill 25 of the enemy. He will take he and the group of guys then will capture the rest, well over 100 guys. He will get the Medal of Honor. He will get his Distinguished Medal. He will receive a lot. In fact, when he received all of this stuff, you need to understand that when the battle was over, he prayed for his comrades that were dead, but he also prayed for the guys that had been killed and the enemy that was captured. Alvin York was a very unique man. Alvin York, though, understood something about this, that he had grown up and how at that moment it had changed dramatically and it had become a sword. Listen to the quote. It's on the screen from him, as he said to George Duncan, who was his general at the time. A higher power than man power guided and watched over me and told me what to do, told me what to do. You know what? He had a sense of there was something bigger going on. I have this gift. I have this thing I enjoy. I enjoy his marksmanship. Sergeant Alvin York is a hero in every kind of way you can talk about a hero. He's a knight. He took that which he enjoyed and handled it with responsibility, and as a result saved a whole group of men. Look at Roman numeral 2. A knight's core generates positive self-talk statements. This is sort of for you as when you go back to being a child, or certainly a young man, which enabled the warrior to emotionally refuel, contributing to the successes and richness of his life. There are certain things that you have. I'm going to actually give you all 10 statements. I'm going to ask you to pick one of those that you're going to make over and over to yourself this week, driving you into the realm of being young again. Now, here's what I want to talk to you right now. I'm thinking about that guy sitting here. He's about 18, 19 years of age. And you've just, that journey from puberty is maybe about 5, 6 years ago. I mean, you're just entering into this whole thing. But now you've sort of said, well, I have actually a bigger problem sometimes being responsible than I do being young again. Well, part of it is because I believe you have come to believe certain things about who you are and what you are. These 10 things being said are just as important for a guy your age as it is for a guy that's 60. So here they are. I'm going to give them to you. I'm just going to give you all 10. Write them in as we go. And then when I get done, I want you to pick one, and we'll talk about it. Here they are. Statement 1. I can be aware. I can be aware. The difference between the two swords. I have something to offer. I am a man. I'm a knight. I have something of worth to give. There's a reason for me to be here. Number 3, can learn. I can learn. The opportunity for me to grow and become more. Therefore, I can forgive. Some of us have been wounded greatly. I have that freedom to forgive. It will allow you the freedom to keep growing as a young man. Number 5, am a good friend. I'm a good friend. I can celebrate life with others. 6, I am competent. I am competent. What a great word. It means that I can handle the sword. Whatever that sword is, from sexuality to responsibility to the freedom to drive, I can handle it. 7, I am loved. And if you don't feel loved by any human being, I am loved means that the God of the universe loves you. That's always the source of love. Number 8, I am an influential leader. That is true of any man aspiring to be a knight. You were designed to be a leader. Have those behind you. Number 9, I am resilient. If I've been beat up to this point in my life, I haven't felt valued and cared for, you can bounce back. You are resilient. If you're facing an illness right now, you are resilient. Number 10, I am motivated. I am motivated. I want you to think about those 10 statements. I want you to pick one. Which one that applies the most to you that maybe you need to say, maybe you need to hear, maybe you need to believe. I want you to pick that. Because I actually believe that when you pick it, life will start to take on that which is fun again. When I was telling you earlier about the Grinch that stole Christmas, what makes the story so meaningful is that the Grinch will change. He will, by this point in the movie, in the scene I'm going to show you in a minute, at this point in the movie, he has gone down into the village and stolen their Christmas. He's now back up near the top of the mountain where he lives, with all of their Christmas. Now here, consider this part of the scene right now. There's a bunch of people down in Whoville, and they're all gathered outside, and they're singing, celebrating, living, loving, being alive, and he just stole their Christmas. And he can't believe it. And he starts talking about what Christmas must be, and he realizes that it can't get wrapped in a box, and it can't be handled with a bow. Christmas comes deep in the heart. It's the rescue of man. No, Dr. Seuss doesn't say this, and the Grinch doesn't say it. It's the rescue of man by God. And suddenly the Grinch realizes that instead of him destroying Christmas, it's his job to help save it. As that part of the scene comes to an end, guys, I want you to know something. You have two swords. One of the swords is tremendously responsible, but can lead to destruction. Be careful with it. The other sword is what's going to allow you to handle this sword well. I actually believe that one of the greatest steps you're going to take towards being a knight is to be young again. We'll talk more about that on Trail 14.